kids. Welcome back to this Sunday service. I hope you're enjoying your last week of holidays. And I was just pouring myself a glass of cream soda. And as I looked at it, I thought, I wonder whether you would say that this glass is half full. And some of you might say, no, that glass isn't half full, it's half empty. And actually, you would all be right. For a glass to be half full, it also has to be half empty. And there are people out there who would say that we can tell a lot about each other by our outlook on things, whether we see something positively as half full or negatively it's half empty. And it reminds me of a story in the Bible where people's positive and negative outlooks on life actually changed the future for a whole nation. Now we know that the Israelites had been released from slavery through amazing miracles that God had performed. And now they were on their way through to the promised land. And they were guided by God. He had a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. His presence was with them all the time. Can you imagine? Just think for a minute what that would have been like. Unbelievable. And they were ready to go into this land that God had promised them through Abraham many, many years ago. And when they got to the border of Canaan, Moses sent 12 spies into this land to go and explore it and find out what it was like. And so off they went. These 12 men were the leaders of the 12 tribes of Israel. They were very important people. And the two that came back first were Joshua and Caleb. And they came with incredible stories of the abundance of this land. They'd found grapes and they'd cut off a branch with one single bunch of grapes, the Bible tells us, that was so big and so heavy that it had to be strapped to a big branch, and they carried it between two of them. Isn't that amazing? Imagine what that land was like. And they advised Moses, we must go in. God is faithful. His promises are true. This is a beautiful land that we should go into. But the 10 other spies, when they came back, told very different stories. They said to Moses, but it's a land filled with giants. It's dangerous. They've got ferocious armies and great warriors. I don't think we should go into this land. Now I wonder which of the spies were right. Was it the 10 spies that saw giants? Or was it Joshua and Caleb who saw a land of plenty? Well, just like at the beginning, actually they were all right. The promised land did have giants, but it also had the promise of great potential, the promise of an abundance that God wanted to bless them with. Now I wonder who the thousands of Israelites that were walking on their way to Canaan would believe. Was it going to be Joshua and Caleb who said, let's trust God, let's believe in his promises, we've seen him fulfill so many miracles? Do they believe them, or do they listen to the ones that say this is a land that devours people, that is filled with giants? Well, sadly, they decided to believe the 10 spies that spoke of giants, that spoke of hard things, and not to believe God, not to believe in his promises. And so what happened is, Moses said, right, we will stay where we are, we're not going in. And for 40 years, those people wandered in the desert, 1 year for every day that the spies were exploring in Canaan. So they wandered in the desert for 40 years. And God said, because they didn't trust him, because they didn't believe in his promises, none of them, none of that generation would go into the promised land. And it was the children of the people of Israel that Joshua was able to lead into the promised land. Now I'm sure you will face giants in your life. In fact, you might be thinking about giants at the moment. Giants of worry and fear. What is school going to be like next week? We don't know. Are we going to be able to learn online? What is it going to look like? There's lots of fears, lots of worries, lots of things that we can be faced with as we go through life. But God wants us to look at his promises. He wants us to be still, like we've talked about, and hear what he's saying. He wants us not to be wandering around in confusion and worry, being anxious, lying in bed at night afraid of the dark. He wants us to know that he promises to never leave us, to always be with us. He promises that he has great things planned for our lives and not things that we need to be afraid of. And he wants us to remember that. He wants us to be like Joshua and Caleb, who said, look at what God has done. And we know he's going to continue to do that. So this week, I really would love you to spend some time with your parents, looking through the Bible and claiming some of the many, many promises that are in there that you can speak into your life, so that you don't live a life that wanders around worrying and anxious and fearful, but you live a life of abundance, seeing the beauty that God has created for us, seeing the amazing blessing that he wants to pour out on you. You know, believing God is not positive thinking. It's called faithfulness. And when we are faithful to believe what God tells us, he is faithful to bless us and to protect us and to provide for us. So some of the things you can do this week, I think Uncle Andrew's one up on me and got his spy outfit on first, but I think you could dress up as spies and you could head into the garden. You could make some binoculars to spy out what's in the land. You could play games of I Spy. You could play hide and seek. And all the time you're doing those things, just remember that this is a story that God put in the Bible to remind us that he is faithful. And we need to just believe in his promises. And we live an amazing, fun-filled life.